and welcome to the Dynamic Duel Podcast, a weekly show where we review superhero films and debate the superiority between Marvel and DC by comparing their characters in stat-based battle simulations. I'm Marvelous Joe.
And I'm his twin brother, Johnny DC.
And in this episode, we will be reviewing the film, the direct-to-video animated film for DC called Reign of the Supermen.
Right, it's the sequel to last summer's Death of Superman animated film.
Yeah, which we both thought was a pretty damn good film. Like, out of all of DC's animated films, it's in the upper echelon.
Yeah, for sure.
And this one I thought was pretty comparable, but we'll get into that later on this episode. Before we get into that, we're going to be going over the comic book movie related news from the past week. Just two bits here. We're going to be talking about the Spider-Man Far From Home official teaser trailer, as well as the Shazam special sneak peek. It wasn't quite a trailer. It was about a minute long. Came out a few days ago.
Yeah, I'm not sure what to call it. I get the impression that it's a trailer preview, like a trailer teaser. We'll see. We'll talk about it later.
Yeah, we're supposed to get an official Shazam trailer later, and hopefully that doesn't have a lot of the same footage that we've already seen here, because then we won't have a lot to talk about in the next episode. But as always, you can check the show notes to go ahead and skip to the segment that you want to.
But before we get into that, quick shout out to Mark1684, Ken Johnson, and JB33ZY38.
That's JBZ. Come on.
JBZ, for giving us reviews on iTunes. As we've mentioned before, if you listened to earlier episodes, we are trying to get to 200 ratings.
We're on a quest.
On iTunes. Once we do that, we will meet all the criteria for Rotten Tomatoes to become official Rotten Tomatoes critics and have our reviews, like for the Reign of Superman, counted towards the Rotten Tomatoes meter.
Help us fulfill our quest, please.
So yeah, special thanks again to those guys and to whomever else rated us. But with that out of the way,
quick, to the No Prize. A No Prize is an award Marvel used to give out up until the 90s to fans. Our version, the Dynamic Duel No Prize, is a digital award that we post on social media that Jonathan personally draws for those who we feel gave the best answer to our question of the week. Last week's question was, which Marvel or DC theatrical release are you looking forward to the most in 2019, and why? Now, we didn't get a whole lot of answers on this one. I blame Jonathan for not posting the question on social media.
It's our birthday today. I was really busy over the weekend.
Oh, it's your birthday?
Yeah, dude.
It's my birthday, too.
What?
Holy shit. What a coincidence. Anyway, so we had three separate answers. You're all getting the win for this one, because really, I guess there's no right answer. It wasn't the greatest of questions, but I do like your answers. So shout out to Jeremy Orr, who gave the answer of Shazam, and he's looking forward to it the most because he's still not sure about the film, but he's hoping that it'll be good and that we'll get a first look at Black Adam, and apparently he peed a little just thinking about it.
As did I.
Happens to the best of us.
Also winning are Adam Spees and Mitch Phipps, who gave the answer Avengers Endgame, because it's the culmination of all these years of Marvel films.
Right, obviously. It's going to be the biggest film of the year. I mean, like, the big question marks of this year, I think, are Shazam and the Joker movie, to see how they're going to turn out. And so, therefore, they kind of pique my curiosity just a little bit more. But in terms of, like, just pure hype, it's got to be Endgame.
I hope it beats Avatar in the box office, because I really want to knock James Cameron down a peg.
Why?
I don't know.
You still hate him for his Wonder Woman comments?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Wow. So the final winner of this No Prize goes to Jace Crump, who gave the answer Spider-Man Far From Home, because the recent trailer that we're going to talk about in a few minutes here has gotten the most excited so far. And I kind of have to agree with that. This trailer so far has got me more interested out of all the other trailers, including Captain Marvel, including Avengers Endgame, and including Shazam.
It is a really good trailer.
Yeah. Let's talk about it. Yeah.
Let's get into it. On to the news.
So ambivalent as I was in the past regarding the story of Spider-Man traveling to Europe with his friends and, fighting crime over there, outside of New York City,
right,
I have to say that this trailer has really got me excited for this film. Nothing against Europe or anything. It just kind of seemed like a detour, I guess. But Europe is cool. And I think this trailer really kind of serves to highlight a unique situation that you never really see Spider-Man in very often.
Well, he's out of his element, Yeah. And that's always like a good setup for conflict and story.
Definitely. Especially since it looks like he initially goes on this field trip without having any intention of actually being Spider-Man. He just wants to be a normal kid for once and hang out with his friends and try to woo Mary Jane and have the time of his life.
Right.
Which anyone can relate to.
And there's actually two versions of this trailer, right?
Right, yeah. There's the domestic trailer and the international trailer. It's the first halves that are different, or the first thirds or so. The domestic trailer starts off with Spider-Man and Aunt May holding some kind of like charity fundraiser. And it's pretty cool to see Aunt May, being supportive of Peter's decision,
Yeah.
as she was in the comics when she was aware of his secret and everything like that. But there's a pretty funny gag here where we see that Aunt May and Happy Hogan are like becoming an item.
It's kind of creepy. How did he know it was a new dress?
That's a good question. I have no idea. Maybe he bought it for her secretly. Maybe he's been stalking her. I don't know. Happy just looks a little bit creepy though anyway. So the international trailer starts off a little bit different. Peter's already on his trip toward Europe and he gets stopped by customs who open up his case and reveal his Spider-Man suit. But like, I guess the customs lady doesn't figure that it's like a real suit. She must think it's a costume or something. And she's like, you can't have this banana. And he's like, right. And the rest of the trailers kind of follow the same path from this point out.
Yeah.
Where you have Peter telling MJ that, she's pretty and she comes back with this
And therefore
kind
I
of
have
unfair
value?
comment.
Yeah. That was annoying.
As a guy, personally, I feel like I would feel pretty shitty after that. When you're coming from the best intentions, it's not always best to kind of, make him feel bad for that.
And she did say she was kidding.
Yeah, that's good. I like when she counters, though, when she says, you look pretty, too. I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah, that was funny.
Ned gets shot in the neck by a poison dart back at the room. I guess not poison, a knockout dart by Nick Fury. And basically, this is where the main action unfolds. Basically, Nick Fury is recruiting Spider-Man to take on these elemental creatures around Europe, I guess.
Quote unquote elemental creatures.
Right, exactly. It may all be an illusion because, as we know, towards the end of this trailer, Mysterio is the main villain.
Although he's not starting off that way, apparently. I remember when we had our Scarecrow versus Mysterio match, you told me that he initially sold himself as a hero.
Right, because the public opinion in the comics was turned against Spider-Man at the time, and Mysterio presented himself as a hero to take on Spider-Man and like convinced Peter that he was crazy and everything like that. And it wasn't until Peter followed Mysterio and found out that he didn't have superpowers, he was just like a visual effects master wearing a suit. So I kind of like that angle that they're taking in the story with Mysterio, because it's not one that we've really seen in any of these movies so far, like a villain who may be manipulating the entire movie's events from the very beginning.
Right.
A lot of that, I think, makes this interesting because it's hard to know what's legit and what's not. Is Nick Fury legit? Are the elementals legit? Most likely not.
I know what is legit. Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio. He looks badass.
Yes, he does. That's got to be one of my most all-time favorite villain reveals because he just kind of like pops out of the smoke like a fucking badass. I mean, he doesn't have his helmet on or anything like that, but you got to sell the face, you got to sell the actor. And he's just so cool. I can't quite put my finger on it. It might be Gyllenhaal's acting because I swear he sells like his energy blast better than any other actor I've ever seen do something like that in these films. Like he really gives it all into that energy blast.
I really like Jake Gyllenhaal as an actor. I would have loved to have him for Batman. He was rumored for Batman for a while.
Yeah.
So, I think we mentioned earlier
He was rumored for Spider-Man too, which is interesting.
Yeah,
way back in
that's
the
true.
day.
That's
for Spider-Man 2.
But I'm glad he's in a superhero role. And, while I was kind of upset that it wasn't initially going to be like a hero role, it looks like he's going to knock this role out of the park.
It really does. I'm really pleased with what we got there.
From one line, he just totally sells it.
He's like, you don't want any part of this.
And he's such
There's no context. I have no idea what he's talking about right there, but I do buy it.
He's just really good at like playing like these dark characters. So I'm wondering how much of that darkness he'll bring to this role.
Yeah, hopefully a lot. Like, hopefully he starts off like really heroic and then slowly gets darker over time as we become more aware of what his intentions are and what his plan is.
Yeah,
and
maybe.
like that.
Yeah.
Part of the plan seems to include these elemental monsters. Definitely under the impression that these are creatures of his making. Although I do find it interesting that they're even included in this movie because they're not like super well-known characters from the comics. Like there were these elemental characters called Hellfire, Hydron, Magnum, and Zephyr. And actually, I wasn't aware of their existence. I actually had to look that up.
Really?
But what I don't necessarily like about it is that I feel like it ruins the opportunity to have certain villains in upcoming Spider-Man adventures.
Like Hydro Man?
Like Hydro Man, like Sandman, like Electro, and like Molten Man. And I said Electro here because although in the comics there was no electrical elemental character, it does seem like he's fighting some kind of lightning entity on the London Bridge.
Like lightning fire kind of guy.
Right.
Well, I mean, we just saw Electro in a movie recently, so I wouldn't be surprised if they didn't come back to him
That's
for a
true.
while.
And we've seen Sandman too, but we haven't seen Hydro Man or anything like that. So it kind of looks like they're taking these villains with the same power sets and kind of like ruining it for those villains in future movies.
I'm sorry, but if Hydro Man ever like headlines his own film, then like they've run out of ideas. Hey, he could combine with Sandman, and they could team up and become that mud monster that they became in the comics. Dumb.
From a visual effects standpoint, this is going to be a damn cool movie. Just seeing the rock monster Magnum form, kind of like how Sandman did in Spider-Man 3.
Yeah.
It was impressive. I think looks pretty damn cool.
These elements without form, like we know, are like the hardest things to do in special effects. So the fact that they're already this well polished for a trailer, I think is pretty promising.
Yeah. We do get to see a couple of alternate suits that Peter uses. He has one suit that's all black, kind of like the Spider-Man Noir suit. And I have to say that I really love his red and black suit.
Yeah, it's cool. I've always liked red and black on Spider-Man.
Yeah, it just, I don't know, it suits him a little bit better, I think.
I think so.
I mean, like, I remember when Doc Ock was wearing those colors with the Superior Spider-Man, I was kind of hoping that Peter, whenever he got the role of Spider-Man back, would keep that color scheme.
Yeah.
But, he went back to blue, which is kind of a shame, but...
Yeah.
The trailer ends with a tag where the kids are sitting around TV watching Mysterio fight Hydro Man guy, Hydron or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're talking about how cool he is, how he's like a mixture of Iron Man and Thor, which I thought was like a pretty cool description of him.
Yeah.
There is another difference here between the international trailer and the domestic trailer, where Flash Thompson calls Peter Parker a dickwad.
Or a loser.
Or a loser, depending on which version you're watching. I did not see that coming. Like, I think that was the most shocking, like, use of vulgar language since the "fuck Batman" line from the Titans trailer. But I did actually laugh at it. I found it funny. Like, my 12-year-old self who used to say dickwad all the time kind of brought it home for him.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I preferred loser.
Really?
Yeah.
I think "What's up, dickwad" is going to be my new personal tagline for 2019.
Oh, gosh.
I think I'm just going to go around.
Looking forward to that.
Yeah. I guess the biggest question that this trailer raises for fans is, when does it take place? Because I think a lot of people are questioning whether or not this trailer actually spoils Avengers Endgame, and that we know that these heroes are going to be coming back from the dead.
Well, we for sure know Spider-Man is, but is Nick Fury? Is that Mysterio? Who is that?
Right, exactly. My theory is that all of this takes place the second that Homecoming ends. I think this movie will actually start with Aunt May finding out that he's Spider-Man, just like how the first movie ended, and then it's going to go from there. And it's going to actually take place before the events of Avengers Infinity War.
Really?
Yes.
Why?
Because I think I remember hearing somewhere that was their plan for the sequel, was to pick up right after Homecoming left off. And I'm not sure they would necessarily spoil Endgame for moviegoers, for those who haven't seen it by the time the Spider-Man movie comes out.
Right. Well, I do think that's smart. But if that is the case, I do wish they would explain that as soon as possible in the marketing.
Yeah, they need to state when this film takes place in the Marvel Cinematic Universe timeline, I think, to put people at ease that, they're not ruining Endgame for everybody.
Right.
So that brings us to our question of the week.
Let's get your opinion. When in the Marvel Cinematic Universe timeline do you think Spider-Man Far From Home takes place?
Specifically in relation to Avengers Endgame. Do you think it takes place after Endgame and, Marvel just doesn't care because they'll assume that you've seen Endgame by this point and know that Spider-Man returns? Or does it take place prior to Infinity War, before we see Spider-Man on the bus and, his spider sense goes off and he leaves to go join Iron Man up in space?
Right.
Tell us what you guys think. I'm really interested in figuring this out.
Post your answer to our Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or email us at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com. We'll pick our favorite answer and draw that person a Dynamic Duel No Prize that we'll post to social media.
All right, moving on to the Shazam special sneak peek. That's what we're going to call it, I guess.
Right, and again, I think it's really a trailer tease because we're supposed to get one Tuesday, which is actually the same day that this podcast episode comes out. Why are they dropping them on Tuesdays? Come on, you're killing us. You're killing us. The Spider-Man Far From Home trailer came out on Tuesday as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, this one's pretty short. It's under a minute long, but it's a good minute. Like right off the bat, we see Billy Batson step off the subway. We kind of get like an overhead shot of what I'm assuming is the Rock of Eternity. And on the left side of this shot, you get to see statues of the 7 deadly sins. And they look fucking amazing.
I didn't even notice that.
How did you not see that?
I have to look at that again.
They look really cool. The designs for these demon creatures, they just look fantastic. I can't wait to see them like in motion and stuff like that. It's going to be really cool. Shortly after that, we see Billy Batson on the roof, and he just like charges towards the edge, leaps off in this really badass pose, yells Shazam, then boom, transforms into Shazam, then just like skyrockets off. It's so cool.
It's such an iconic shot. It makes me think that it's either the end shot of the film or it's the shot that sets up the final battle in the third act.
Right. I was thinking the same thing. It's really cool. And the trailer right after that, goes on to show him like showcasing his powers, like flying, like super speed. He moves like lightning. It's really cool. like someone's chasing him through the city as they're flying. I'm assuming it's Dr. Savannah because, it also shows them fighting. But during this, there's text saying that he's not so serious. DC, people complain that it's too serious, too dark, right?
Right.
And this is sort of like saying, hey, we're not that. And it shows him trying to buy beer, which is, I knew they were going to do that. And it's as hilarious as I thought it would be. I'd like to buy your finest beer, please. It was just a great delivery. Zachary Levi is going to kill it as Shazam, I think.
Yeah, his suit is still a little bit too poofy, which kind of annoys me, but I think during the course of the film, I'll be willing to suspend disbelief long enough to think that those are actual muscles, maybe. I don't know.
I mean, during this trailer, I suspended disbelief. It didn't really bother me at all.
No?
Personally. The trailer goes on. The last shot of it, again, it's a short trailer, is them at a real estate agent's office.
Yeah.
And they're like looking to buy a lair. And they're just like describing it like, like something like Castle-esque, overlooking the water. It's hilarious.
Yeah, the Jack Dylan Grazer kid.
Yeah.
He has really good delivery. He has good comedic timing.
Oh, he's hilarious. I loved him in It. He's going to be great in this, I feel, too.
Yeah, he might steal the show. I don't know.
For sure. I mean, there's a reason why he wasn't Billy Batson.
Right, because he's going to get more screen time probably as Freddy.
Yeah, as a kid.
Yeah, I'm still really interested in seeing who's going to play the grown-up superpowered version of that kid later on in the movie.
Oh, right. Yeah. I imagine we'll get some cameos. I can't wait. Maybe Matt Damon. He cameos in everything. Why not? He needs to cameo in a DC film already.
No one really wants to do that, though.
Whatever, dude. I bet there are people lining up to cameo in this movie.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
It looks like it's going to be really good.
I wouldn't say good so much as fun. It is still very much a wild card.
I'll say both. Good and fun. But I think that does it for the news segment. So let's move on to our Reign of the Supermen review.
Let's do it.
Okay, Reign of the Supermen. The film is currently available on digital download. I think it's going to be on Blu-ray a little bit later.
You can find it on like YouTube and stuff like that right now. But I'm thinking that it's eventually going to find its way onto the DC Universe streaming app.
Yeah, I mean, Death of Superman did. So yeah, it probably will. And definitely make sure that you watch the movie before you listen to our review. Just full disclosure, this is a spoiler review. And really, this is, the second half of a two-part film.
Right, so there's going to be spoilers for Death of Superman in this review as well, even though, the movie is called Death of Superman.
You know the ending. Everyone knows the ending, right? Just a quick recap of what happened at the end of Death of Superman. Clark Kent revealed to Lois Lane that he was Superman. He died at the hands of Doomsday, and then Superman's body at the very end is taken from his grave. And then during the end credits, we got certain snippets that set up this film. We see Superboy come out of his growth chamber and grab a leather jacket. We see John Henry hammering a steel plate into the Superman logo. We see the Eradicator building the Fortress of Solitude in the North Pole. Mm-hmm. And we see Cyborg Superman just fly by. He just appears.
Right.
That's the last shot. So with that as sort of a setup, I've seen The Reign of the Supermen twice. I watched it once, and I was like, oh man, I have to watch The Death of Superman again. So I did. And then I followed it up with Reign of the Superman again.
Did it play one long movie?
Yeah, it did. It reminds me sort of like Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2. They just fit together really well. I think you're almost meant to see them back to back, which is why in theaters, they had a special event where you could do that.
Why didn't we go to that?
We didn't get tickets.
Oh, we should have.
Yeah, we should have.
Despite the fact that this is the second part of a two-part story, I think I had forgotten most of that setup from the Death of Superman movie.
Right.
So when I was watching this, I actually felt like even if you haven't seen the first film, you could dive into this and enjoy it, only knowing that in the previous movie, Superman died. I think that's really all the setup you need.
Well, I think, also the setup that he revealed to Lois that he was Superman is also necessary.
Okay, yeah.
Basically everything I said prior, maybe, is necessary. But, I really liked The Death of Superman because even though it's a storyline that we've seen on screen a few times, whether in animation or in Batman v Superman, this version resonated a lot more. I think because of how emotional it was, because of how well we got to know the characters. Even a character like Bibbo Babowski made me cry with his reaction to Superman's death in the first film.
Right, it was as poignant as the story has ever been, and as poignant as the story of the death of one of the most beloved superheroes of all time should be.
Oh, for sure.
Check out our review of the Death of Superman movie if you haven't already and you've seen that film.
Yeah. Now, this film, Reign of the Supermen, is interesting, especially as a comic fan, because it's part of the story we've never really seen before on screen. The Reign of the Supermen story in the comics was really interesting, because for a long time, we didn't know if one of these guys was Superman, or, at least between Cyborg, Superman, and the Eradicator.
Right. Or if Superman was coming back.
Right, exactly. It was, a big mystery. The replacement Supermen are really cool characters, but not all of them get their fair share of character development in this film, I think.
Yeah.
Like specifically Steel and the Eradicator, which is unfortunate for someone like me who's a fan of the storyline and wants people to be, as invested in the characters as I am. But I also understand that, the challenge of adapting months of storyline into an hour-and-a-half film.
Yeah.
And I think this may be as successful an undertaking in adapting that story as you can get.
I was a big fan of all four of the characters. I think they presented him as like unique individuals.
Yeah, they're all different from each other for sure.
But yet super powerful, and the fight between the four of them, like towards the beginning of the film, was one of my favorite parts of the movie.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Not everything, admittedly, in the DC animated universe is worth recommending, but I can't not recommend both this and The Death of Superman, because they capture the essence of the comics so well, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Like, there's so many Easter eggs and tie-ins to the other animated films. It's like the MCU.
Yeah, kind of.
And the MCU works, I think, for Marvel because Marvel is so character-focused.
Yeah.
And I sort of feel like DC's approach to their animated universe it's the same approach.
Right, yeah. They're really interested in telling a singular character story, but they're not afraid of tying it into the rest of the universe in really interesting ways.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think overall this movie did better in terms of like world building and action, but The Death of Superman was more resonating. So it was kind of a trade-off between the two films. Overall, I think I may have liked them equally, but for different reasons.
Oh, exactly. I mean, both of them had great action.
Yeah, that's true, but the fight between Superman and Doomsday, you kind of already know how that's going to play out. It was exciting to watch, and it was like brutal, but I found it far more interesting to see the four Supermen like battle it out. I just like the action pieces here.
Well, again, I think a lot of that has to do, again, because we've seen the Superman Doomsday fight so many times, but we haven't seen these characters.
Right, yeah.
So let's get into the character breakdown.
Okay.
So starting with Lois Lane, I think you could argue Lois was the protagonist of the first film, and she definitely was here.
This is her film.
Yeah,
for sure.
Absolutely.
This is definitely her film and probably Lex Luthor's film.
Yeah.
More so than any of the Supermen.
I agree. And for Lois Lane, Rebecca Romijn did another fantastic job with the character. I think I mentioned in our review of the first film that, in my opinion, this Lois Lane is the best Lois Lane we've seen on screen in a long time.
Or ever, really.
Right. Her arc in this film is to solve the mystery of the Supermen, which isn't as strong of an arc as you'd think in the film. Mm-hmm. She solves the mysteries fairly easily and without too much explanation. I think the main drive of the film as a viewer, especially if you're familiar with the story, is primarily to see how Superman returns from the dead. That's what you're waiting to see.
Right. Yeah, I mean, this is comic lore, it's all happened in the past, so we as viewers already know that Superman's coming back. So, like you said before, it does lose that appeal, and so it does end up being a weaker arc. That being said, I was far more interested in that arc than seeing Superman actually return. I feel like they could have gone much deeper within the mystery of the Superman.
Oh yeah, I agree. Absolutely. You could almost made this like a 3-part film.
Yeah.
Like The Death of Superman, The Reign of the Superman, and The Return of Superman. Or something like
definitely,
that.
Definitely.
And I still think Lois would have been the protagonist of each one of those.
Yeah.
I just really like this specific version of Lois Lane.
Definitely.
She's fantastic.
Yeah.
My favorite scene with her was probably during the end fight between Superman and Cyborg Superman in the Watchtower, because they're in zero gravity. And she's able to fly around the satellite, armed with apocalyptic weaponry. And she gets to save Superman in a way that doesn't feel shoehorned.
Yeah. Well, she's seen him in action so many times, and she's, a very courageous character in her own right, that you'd have to think that if she did have superpowers, like the ability to fly and stuff like that, this is exactly how she would handle them.
Right.
In the service of others and saving people that she loved. And being a badass while doing it.
Yeah, I mean, she takes damage. She gets, lasered in the arm and the leg. You really feel for her. And I think it's because Rebecca Romijn, I know it's an animated film, but she makes it feel more real than a lot of other interpretations that we've seen in the past, I think.
Yeah. I still think that you should have given Rebecca Romijn the Brothers Award for the Best Actress of 2018, because she definitely carries that great performance from the last movie into this one.
She got the runner-up. I had to give Amber Heard something.
No, you didn't.
I'm going to get her flack for this for the rest of the year. I already know it. So you mentioned that Lex Luthor was probably the second protagonist or second main character in the film.
Yeah, I think so.
I really did not like Rainn Wilson's performance in the first film. I think I mentioned that in our review. But I think, that had to do a lot with the writing. The way he just walked around insulting his employees made him come across as like insecure, but not in this film. I really liked Lex Luthor a lot more in this film. And based on the end credit stinger, like I'm really interested to see where they take the character. Though honestly, I can't figure out whether I really liked or really disliked how much he struggled with Superboy.
I really liked it. You could tell from the get-go that Lex Luthor just kind of really hated Superboy and his attitude and everything like that.
There were parts where it was like really hilarious. It was actually like really funny, like when Superboy would be posing for photos or like speaking to the public, and just seeing Lex Luthor's reactions. It was just priceless. Like even the greatest mind on the planet can't understand the behavior of a teenager.
Yeah. I think the interaction between Superboy and Lex Luthor was my favorite thing about this movie, actually. Superboy was by far my favorite character. And a lot of his comedy stemmed from that relationship.
Right, exactly. So Superboy was voiced by Cameron Monaghan. He's the same guy who plays the Joker in the Gotham TV series. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him.
No.
He was also my favorite character, I think, in this film. And he stole, like, whatever scene he was in with his humor. He definitely had the most personality of the other Supermen, though I think that may be a byproduct of how much more screen time he had than the others.
That's true.
Just because of his relationship with Lex Luthor.
Yeah. And I don't know, maybe I was biased because in our last episode, we did a duel match between Superboy and Rogue. So I felt like I went into this movie knowing a lot more about him than the other characters. Although I was a little bit disappointed that we didn't get to see his tactile telekinesis in action.
Yeah, I actually wasn't surprised by that. That actually played a huge role in our speculation for the last episode. But in the comics, I think starting with Jeff Johns on the Teen Titans, they started to like sort of downplay the tactile telekinesis and just make him, like a younger Superman.
Okay.
But it's one of my favorite aspects of the character. And yeah, I was also disappointed. My favorite scene with Superboy was actually just a one-liner when, like the media is praising Cyborg Superman for saving the president and Lex Luthor throws something at the TV in anger, breaking it. And Superboy is just like calmly like, couldn't find the remote.
Yeah, that was great.
I don't know why I just cracked up laughing at that one.
He was like cocky and snarky, but not in an annoying way.
Yeah.
Kind of in an endearing way.
Exactly. Moving on to Steel. Steel is voiced by Chris Williams, who plays Black Lightning in the CW show.
Yeah, I saw that.
He doesn't really factor into the plot too much in the first half of the film, but he does kind of team up with Lois in the second half. He has like some really cool action scenes, and that suit of armor is just badass.
I love how they made his hammer jet powered. That's not how it is in the comics, right?
No, it was like inertia based. Like the further he threw it, the bigger the impact it was going to have.
A lot of the impact strength from the hammer itself was based on the fact that like the back of the hammer could open up and propel itself into the target.
Yeah, it was a really cool interpretation, I think, of the hammer and of the character.
I would love to see that in live action.
That would be badass. Way better than the Shaquille O'Neal shit that we got. I think every scene with Steel was cool, but the one that stood out to me was probably when he returns home, and as he's walking inside, like these magnetic columns pop up and take off his armor. It was very like Iron Man from the first Avengers film.
Yes.
I think intentionally, like as a way of saying, hey, this is our Iron Man.
Yeah, I think so. I thought it was more of a ripoff than anything else. But, it made me think of Iron Man, which made me enjoy it because Iron Man's cool.
Cyborg Superman. He was voiced by both Jerry O'Connell, who also does the voice of Clark Kent, and Patrick Fabian. He's the voice actor for Hank Henshaw. The character really benefits from both actors' performances, I think, because you really want to believe that he's the real Superman.
He definitely makes the strongest case in the beginning that he is the real Superman.
For sure. But when he turns bad, he turns like maniacal and kind of scary. He's a really good villain, and in a way, I think he kind of benefits from the lack of character setup that the other Supermen kind of don't, because he's even more mysterious.
Right.
When we do learn more about how Hank Henshaw became Cyborg Superman, I wasn't thrilled. But in the end, I think it worked for the character in this animated universe. In the comics, he teams up with Mongol. But I don't think Mongol has been established in this universe yet. And Mongol has always been, to me, like just Darkseid light, in my opinion. I think the craziest scene with Cyborg Superman was when he starts like ripping out the apocalyptic tech from his body.
Yes.
Like, towards the end. That's when he starts getting scary.
It was violent because he pulled this thing out of his head, but there was like brain matter attached to it.
Right?
It's like he's pulling out his own
like
brain.
blood. Yeah. Like, this film is pretty family friendly overall, I think.
Except for that part.
During that part, I had to tell my daughters to cover their eyes. The last Superman, the Eradicator, he was the most underdeveloped of the Supermen in this film.
He was the biggest question mark for me because his whole purpose was to protect Kal-El's rebirth chamber. However, it didn't explain why that would make him come to Metropolis to attack Lex Luthor.
Right. It was a real shame that he was so underdeveloped because he's probably the coolest of the four, in my opinion.
Really?
He's like the Punisher meets Superman, but also like so much more than that. They didn't really like delve into that too much. Like his backstory in the comics is pretty interesting. And, maybe we'll do a dual episode with him one day, but essentially like he's like a computer. In the comics and in this film, he's a hologram.
A hard light hologram?
Yeah. And one that, can shoot energy. He's just a really cool character. He sort of turns to like vigilantism because essentially he's like xenophobic in a way. He doesn't like humans. He just wants to protect Superman, protect the planet. He's programmed in a way to be merciless. He's really interesting. We're going to have to do a duel with him one day.
Against whom?
I have no idea.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah. He definitely came across in this film as the most powerful of the replacements since it took like the other three to take him down. It would have been cool if he had played like a bigger part in the final battle. But if he had, like, story-wise, the real Superman character, and Lois, I guess, wouldn't have needed to overcome, like, as big of a challenge.
They wouldn't have had their moments to shine like they did.
Right. So the last character I want to talk about is Superman. Clark Kent, who again is voiced by Jerry O'Connell. When I mentioned how this film lacked the emotional resonance of the death of Superman, I'm specifically talking about Superman's return. Like, it wasn't triumphant. It wasn't even exciting. I expected to be like, yeah!
He's back!
Yeah, exactly.
And in the end, it was just kind of like, oh, he's back.
Exactly. Even in the Justice League film, his return, like, brought trace amounts of, like, wonderment and maybe even a little bit of dread. But here he was like, hey, stop fighting, you two! With that, like, distracting haircut. I hate that long hairstyle for Superman. Like, even when I read the comics in the 90s, I hated it. I was like a preteen, and I was like, get a haircut, you hippie.
Long hair is fine. Just, it does look weird on Superman.
I agree. The best moment with him was the final scene before the credits, when Clark, like, runs toward the camera in the alley, and he opens his shirt to show the Superman logo, and we see him, like, fly through Metropolis, past the happy, hopeful faces, into space. And then we see him, like, in his updated costume, which looks like a lot like Henry Cavill's suit in the live-action films. It was all very inspiring. It was very, like, Christopher Reeves. And his suit, like, lost the Mandarin color they had going on.
Yeah.
He still doesn't have the red trunks. Again, it's very Henry Cavill, which I think is intentional. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if, in, like, the upcoming Wonder Woman movie, if they don't update her costume to be more like Gal Gadot's.
Yeah, with the skirt and everything.
Yeah, exactly. Let's get into the story highlights.
Okay.
So the film starts off 6 months after the death of Superman, and this film came out, like, around the same time in relation to the first film. So it's like real time.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So it starts off with Kent Grant interviewing G. Gordon Godfrey, a.k.a. Glorious Godfrey of Apocalypse.
Huh? What?
Yeah. Glorious Godfrey in the comics has the power of, like, persuasion, and he was pretty effective at, like, instigating public ill will towards superheroes in the comics. This is sort of, I feel like, the first inkling that this is all orchestrated by Darkseid.
Yeah, I had no idea that Darkseid was even going to show up in this movie, so I was super surprised when he did.
I was surprised as well. Yeah, totally. During the interview, as they talk, we see, Superboy stop some purse snatchers, Steel save Jimmy Olsen from a bus, the Eradicator take out a group of intergang thugs, and Cyborg Superman, like, deflects a nuclear missile from South Kosnia to North Kosnia. It's all, like, good setup, I think, for the characters.
Yeah.
Right after that, and probably the film's strongest emotional scene, Lois Lane is cleaning out Clark Kent's apartment. And we're reminded of the last secret note Clark gave Lois just before going off to fight Doomsday in the last film.
Yeah, it was, I love you.
Right. And in a conversation with the Kents, she realizes that she could find out if any of the new Supermen are the real deal by asking them what the last secret was. And that sort of sets up the film. It sort of sets up, like, Lois's arc, right?
Right.
She meets with Wonder Woman right after that to ask for information on the new Superman.
And there's a little bit of female bonding there.
Yeah, it's an okay scene. Like, Wonder Woman doesn't have any information for her. So you almost have to wonder, like, why was the scene included since it doesn't drive the narrative of the story?
I think just closure on their relationship from the previous movie, I think. Because there was a little bit of tension between the two characters, and it kind of carried forward. Although I do not like how similarly drawn Lois Lane and Wonder Woman are. Like,
yeah.
Superman definitely has a type.
They looked exactly the same. I agree. Yeah. And now that I think about it, like maybe the scene was just there to remind us early on that the Justice League are a part of the story. But like even then, like they're barely a part of it.
Kind of.
Wonder Woman leaves Lois with a warning not to lose herself in the process of solving the mystery of the Superman. I have no idea what that was about.
Yeah.
But, you know, she does solve the mystery of each one. She learns Superboy is a clone from Donovan. She realized Eradicator was the Kryptonian data matrix hologram that Superman showed her in the first movie. She realized Hank Henshaw was Cyborg Superman because he visited the grave of his wife Terry.
Right. And idiot move.
Yeah, and Hank's body was never recovered as well, which, you know, was a stretch. But I'm surprised she was able to deduce that he was Henshaw just from that information.
Yeah.
And she realized that John Henry Irons was Steel. I don't know how, actually.
Yeah, she just kind of like showed up in his lair and was like, I'm horrible with secret identities, but I knew who you were.
Yeah.
I think because she saw him snooping around LexCorp and she just kind of put two and two together.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
But those are some quality-ass deductive reasoning skills for a person who couldn't figure out that Clark Kent was Superman.
Just because of glasses.
Right.
Yeah, I kind of had a problem with all of her mystery solutions.
It was just too easy.
Yeah. After the meeting with Wonder Woman, Lois attends Lex Luthor's official unveiling of Superboy, or I guess his Superman, who Lex Luthor promises will make Metropolis safe again. Lois sneaks into Project Cadmus, and she learns that Superboy is the clone at that time. This leads up to what I think is the coolest action scene of the film,
yes,
when Superboy, Steel, and Cyborg Superman face off against the Eradicator.
Right, because the Eradicator wants to kill Lex Luthor.
Right.
I still don't know why. It's just the thing.
Because he's a threat to Superman.
I mean, yeah, I guess. Okay, yeah, that does make sense.
There you go. The scene also has one of the funniest moments, I think, when the Eradicator beats the crap out of Superboy, then flies off, and Superboy, like, still pounded into the ground, is like, yeah, you better run, jerk. Then the Eradicator, like, turns around and flies back at him at, like, sonic speed, and Superboy is like, uh-oh. But it's still his hammer that ends up saving them.
Right.
When Cyborg Superman shows up, he monologues to the Eradicator about how Lex Luthor is not a criminal in the eyes of the law, and how real justice is everyone's right. It's very Superman-esque.
Yes.
And he definitely comes across as the most Superman of the bunch, which I think is right from the comics. Although when the fight ends and the Eradicator returns to the Fortress of Solitude to recharge, the robots seemingly refer to him as Kal-El, though it's later revealed that they're actually referring to Superman in a spaceship. It's well-written subterfuge, if you're not already familiar with the story, because then you're like, wait,
so the Eradicator is
the other
real one.
guy, which again, is straight from the comics. Lois Lane reveals Superboy is a clone to the public, and Cyborg Superman visits Lois Lane in another great scene that really makes you question if he's really Superman. He sells a good explanation for why he looks the way he does, but he can't answer like what the last secret was to Lois, so she can't be certain. The scene does set up some additional stakes when Cyborg Superman foreshadows that the death of Superman will bring otherworldly invaders.
Right, because they'll see Earth as more defenseless now.
Exactly. And there's a montage of the different Supermen saving people, though when it comes to Superboy, he's also doing like unboxing videos on YouTube.
That was great.
And taking selfies with adoring fans every chance he can. Lex Luthor, he gets pissed off at him and tries to restore Superboy's public image by having him be a part of the security detail for the president's appearance at the launch of the Justice League satellite headquarters. So the Justice League are there, and so is Cyborg Superman, when suddenly a portal appears and a parademon invasion emerges. As the superheroes rescue civilians and fight off the parademons, the portal begins breaking down, and conveniently, like almost to an absurd extent,
so stupid,
it lands on top of the entire Justice League team, causing them to vanish.
Right. So yeah, like the radius of this apocalyptic portal that's over the Justice League is just large enough to fit the entire team. So it's falling from the sky. It takes a long-ass time to fall from the sky.
Right.
And the team just happens to group right underneath where this portal is falling on top of them.
Right.
It's so stupid that I had a hard time with that part of the movie. And I think that might be the film's biggest mistake.
Yeah, the suspension of disbelief that you would have to give for that to happen is a lot to ask, I think, of the audience. It was a little too much.
Yeah.
Halfway through the film, the Superman secrets start to get revealed. Superboy learns that he's a clone of both Superman and Lex Luthor. We learned that Cyborg is Hank Henshaw and is being manipulated by Darkseid. And Lois reveals that she knows John Henry Irons is Steel.
There was a brief moment when Superboy learns that he's a clone and Lex Luthor kills Donovan, the scientist guy.
Yeah.
And Superboy, the guy's death didn't really seem to impact him whatsoever. He just kind of accepted it.
Yeah, he was like, oh, Lex Luthor kills people.
Yeah, it almost made it feel to me like Superboy was complicit in that scientist murder because he didn't do anything to stop it.
Right. Should have gone down there and tried to save him.
Yeah. And really, I mean, like, he's not the hero that he's supposed to be just yet because really he's just coming into his own by this point.
Right.
But it doesn't portray him in this film as a very heroic character because of that.
Yeah, and I almost think that, like, maybe you could justify that in that, like, Lex Luthor programmed him so that, like, he wouldn't stop anything bad Lex Luthor had done. But they didn't establish that in the film.
Right.
Because, you know, in my bio for Superboy and our Superboy versus Rogue fight, I mentioned that Lex Luthor had done some programming to Superboy while he was still being grown.
Oh, that's true.
You
to
know?
control him.
Exactly. You know, that would have been useful information to have if that was the reason why Superboy didn't save Donovan.
Yeah, definitely.
So Cyborg Superman takes advantage of everyone's despair at the loss of Superman and now the Justice League to turn ordinary citizens into superpowered drones for his Cyber Corps, which I thought was like a pretty cool call out to his time in the comics leading the Manhunters, you know, like this cybernetic precursor to the Green Lantern Corps.
Oh, is that what this was supposed to be? Like a reference to the Manhunters?
I thought it was a call out to that at the very least. The technology he uses is apocalyptin in this movie. So, you know, Steel confronts Intergang, who is buying modified apocalyptin weapons from LexCorp, and Lois Lane goes to confront Lex herself. Steel tracks down Intergang weapons stolen by the Eradicator all the way to the Fortress of Solitude. And it's not clear why the Eradicator needed the weapons, but the real Superman puts them to good use for his final fight.
Yeah.
So maybe that was the reason.
So he could protect himself after he's vulnerable from coming out of the rebirthing chamber.
Yeah. Superman emerges from his rocket ship alive and healed during a battle between Steel and the Eradicator in the fortress. Superboy arrives, and they form a plan to stop Cyborg Superman, while Lex shows Lois a transmission he had intercepted from Cyborg Superman that revealed his connection to Darkseid. Lex shows Lois that he has a mother box, and they go to the Watchtower satellite launch location where Cyborg Superman is based in order to distract him and return the Justice League from some hellish dimension.
Yeah, and so in this animated cinematic universe, the Justice League faced Darkseid for the first time in which movie?
In Justice League War.
Okay. So yeah, there was a lot of precedent there that I wasn't aware of.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if this was the first time they were seeing Darkseid or not. But it's interesting how much of a long game Darkseid is playing that has been revealed in this movie, even with the whole unleashing of Doomsday and everything like that.
Yeah.
Like he was an assassin sent to destroy Superman. And we didn't know that from that first movie.
Yeah, we learned that Darkseid was responsible for Doomsday as like part of a 1-2 punch to destroy both Superman and later his reputation through Cyborg Superman. Right. That was interesting. So back at the Watchtower, Darkseid takes control of Cyborg Superman, having him use the Cyber Corps to open a portal for his invasion. Lois confronts Cyborg Superman in the Watchtower and watches as he removes the apocalyptic tech from his body that's controlling him, stopping the invasion before it even starts.
I thought the movie would actually end there and like Cyborg Superman would have saved the day kind of, but it was really interesting when he was still bad, you know, and posing just as large of a threat as what was coming through that portal with the Cyber Corps.
With the Cyber Corps, right. The other Supermen arrive on the scene. Superboy and Steel protect Lex Luthor as he uses the Mother Box to return the Justice League, while Superman himself crashes his ship into the Watchtower to take on Cyborg Superman using apocalyptic weaponry.
I thought it would have been cooler, actually, if the other Supermen provided the real Superman more backup. They knew that he was weakened.
Yeah, but I think they did also a good job of providing a threat in the Cyber Corps. Enough of a threat that other Supermen couldn't help him. For them and the Justice League, because Lex helps them return, and they go off to protect the people of Metropolis from the Cyber Corps.
Yeah.
Cyborg Superman launches the Watchtower into space, and it reveals that he blames the depowered Superman for the death of his wife. Because if you remember in the death of Superman, their shuttle, the Excalibur, was destroyed by the Doomsday asteroid while Superman was busy, you know, having dinner with Lois Lane.
Right.
Just before Cyborg Superman can kill the real Superman, Lois manages to open the sun shields on the satellite, which powers up Superman, and he uses a Kryptonian crystal to upload the Eradicator to Cyborg Superman's system and finish him off for good, which I thought was kind of cool.
I love those Kryptonian crystals and all like just the different ways that different Superman media has used them. And in this case, it was like a flash drive spear kind of thing.
Yeah, like a USB dagger.
Yeah.
In the process of destroying Cyborg Superman, all of the civilians who were in the Cyber Corps die, which was really dark, I thought.
Yeah, because they were innocent, Pretty much all they wanted to do was help for the most part. I think some may have wanted power and stuff like that. Right. But, the central character of the Cyber Corps was definitely just a guy who wanted to make a difference.
Yeah, it's a pretty tragic end. Because right after that, like we flash forward a few weeks later, and Clark Kent and Superman, return to their normal life, and Superboy is living with the Kents. In the post-credits scene, it looks like Lex Luthor is now a member of the Justice League.
Right, because they're taking the fight to Darkseid now.
Yeah, I don't think they've announced the film yet, but I think this film will lead into the Darkseid War. I could be wrong.
What's the Darkseid War?
It was a storyline in the comics where the Anti-Monitor and Darkseid fight and the Justice League gets involved, and then they become like the gods of Apocalypse and stuff like that. It's pretty cool.
Really?
Lex Luthor was in the Justice League for that storyline. They did hint, like you mentioned, in this final scene that they may be taking the fight to Apocalypse, so we'll see.
That'll be a cool movie.
Yeah. Actually, I don't know what I'm talking about. It's already been announced the next Justice League animated feature will be Justice League versus the Fatal Five. The Fatal Five are villains to the Legion of Superheroes.
Uh-huh.
So I'm not sure how the ending of this film will lead into that, but I guess they'll find a way. That film was supposed to come out this spring, with Batman Hush coming out in the summer.
Oh.
And Wonder Woman Bloodlines, I guess, in the fall.
Oh, dang, that's a lot of animated films.
Yeah, quite a few. But overall, I thought this was a great conclusion to the storyline that started in Death of Superman.
It was a satisfying conclusion, I would say.
I agree.
It's pretty much exactly what I wanted. It didn't blow me away, nor do I think it stuck with me like the Death of Superman movie did. But like I said earlier, the action was great, and it was a cool enough movie, I think, to compensate.
It has a lot going for it in the character of Lois Lane, again, who I think is just so well done, and the characters of the other Supermen, who are just really cool and interesting. And again, it's exciting to see them here for like the first time, really.
Yeah, I wonder if Superboy will continue on in like Titans animated movie or something.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. The Titans, they're established in this animated universe.
And they did get a shout out in this.
Yeah, a few times. I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case.
Yeah.
In the end, I would say that while it didn't resonate as much as the Death of Superman, I still found it as enjoyable. So I'm giving it the same star rating, which is 3.5 stars.
Yeah, well, when I first got done watching the movie, I actually thought that I liked it more than The Death of Superman, but then the more I thought about it, you might be right. I would either give this movie a 4-star rating or a 3.5-star rating.
I thought the same thing, which is one of the reasons why I really wanted to rewatch The Death of Superman.
Uh-huh.
And when I did, I kind of, refelt all the feels that the first one gave me. So I was like, the second one can't compare. But once I saw the second one again, I didn't like it any less. It's still like a really good story.
Yeah.
And again, it felt like they were both one movie in a way.
Every time you see a good version of these animated films, it just makes you wonder what they're doing with the live action shared universe, which may not even be a thing anymore. Like the latest reports are saying that due to the success of Aquaman, DC is going to focus more on standalone stories and not even think about crossover films or anything.
Yeah, Toby Emmerich told the Hollywood Reporter that, I believe.
Yeah.
That's kind of horrifying in a way.
It's like they're learning the wrong lessons. Just because the Aquaman movie was a success and made over $1 billion doesn't mean that you don't create a large, expansive shared universe. You still can. You still should.
I just don't think they know how.
Yeah, it's because it's DC and they're dumb.
But fuck off. And I mean, the rumor right now is that Wonder Woman 1984 is going to kind of reboot the whole timeline. So who knows how much we'll retain from the Aquaman movie or anything really. I mean, until the Wonder Woman film comes out, everything I think is up in the air.
Yeah.
Allegedly.
Yeah, that's true.
So that does it for this review. Hopefully you guys have seen the film. If you have, let us know what you thought of it. You can reach out to us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or you can email us at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, you can find links to all of our social media accounts by visiting our website, dynamicduel.com, where you can also find a link to our merch store, where we sell lots of cool DC and Marvel swag with the artwork from the no prizes that we do on them. In our next episode, we're going to be reviewing Netflix's The Punisher Season 2. I'm about 5 episodes into it right now, and it is freaking amazing. I love episode 3 so much.
Okay, I haven't started this season yet, but I really liked season 1. So I'm definitely looking forward to this one.
Yeah, it's really good so far. So look forward to that review in our next episode. Definitely watch the show if you haven't started watching it yet, because it's awesome.
Please don't forget to rate, review, share, and subscribe our podcast with all of your friends and family. And don't forget, if you have an iTunes account and you haven't yet rated us, please do that. If you could take 10 seconds to do that, we would really appreciate it, and it would help us out.
Yep. But yeah, that does it for this episode. So talk to you guys next week.
Up and away.
What's up, dickwad?
Really?